Okay, let me share my screen. All right, let's get started. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, thank you. So welcome to the personal website tutorial. It is going to be hosted by me, Jenny, and Devin, who is somewhere in this meeting. And then we're just gonna go over how to make a personal website. It's going to be super great. So let's start. I won't present because I don't want to click out of the PowerPoint every time I present, but first of all, let's start with motivation and we'll go over one example. So this is technically wrong, but why would you want to make a personal website? First, it's to learn the basics of web development. Web development is like a really coveted skill. Like a lot of companies look for it. Basically, if you tell them you know how to web develop, people are like, wow, like we really like you. Like that sounds like an over-exaggeration, but I promise it's not. It is truly a skill that people really do value because it's kind of hard to learn, I would say. The second thing is that you can showcase your projects on a visual platform. It's kind of boring if on your LinkedIn or like on your resume, you have like the cool projects you built, but it's like described in words, right? But if you have a platform that you can host it, have like videos on it, have pictures on it, then it's much more interactive and more impressive to, like if you want to show your friends or family or recruiters, people like that. Lastly, you could definitely be really creative with your personal website. You can showcase like what kind of person you are. Really fun. I'm just going to go through and show Devin's website because out of the two of us, he's the one who actually does have a personal website and it's super cool. Ta-da, so you can see, he has his motivation. He has his little, bio introducing himself. What do I do? He has projects. What can I do for you? Where you can like email, or you can have people email you if they have any questions. This is definitely one of the cooler websites I've seen. You have a link to his resume. You can go to his about page where you can like learn about him and like as well as like different tools that he knows how to use. Super fun. Oh, there's something in the chat. He says,
why is Devin so cool?
I asked myself that every day. Yeah.
Devin is really cool.
Devin is really
I'm not
cool.
gonna lie.
I'm very not.
Okay. So hopefully you guys kind of can see like what kind of cool website you can make. Obviously, this will probably not be possible in the hour that we have together. If you guys make this in the hour, like you guys, I'll be very impressed. So that's probably not going to happen. But today, let me just go over some things to note beforehand. You will probably need to spend time outside of, not probably, you will need to spend time outside of this 1 hour slot, unfortunately, if you want to make a website that you're actually going to be proud of and you actually want to showcase. But we're going to be providing support to that because you can post your questions in the tutorial help channel. You can reach out to me or Devin individually. You can ask to schedule a Zoom call. We're going to have office hours. We'll try to provide as much like support and help as possible, but it's definitely not going to be possible to complete the entire thing today. Probably not. Also, one disclaimer is that a lot of web development is Googling. Like, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Like, Devin can vouch for me on this since he is just more experienced at it than I am, but a lot of it is trial and error and a lot of it is Googling. Can you vouch for me on that?
Yes, I can vouch. It's a lot of Googling and it's a lot of suffering.
Yes, unfortunately. So with that bright introduction, let's kind of get into like the more nits and gritties about web development. Devin, take it over.
All right. Yeah, so the standard web development workflow is you edit your code inside of your text editor. So be it like VS Code, Vim, whatever. And then to see your changes, you open a file and then that'll bring you to your web browser where it'll open all of your changes up so you can see your website visually. And then when you want to change something, you go back into your text editor, edit stuff, save, and then go back to your web browser, refresh, and then it'll show you your changes again. And then when you want to deploy your website, so to show all of your friends and stuff, all you have to do is push your code onto GitHub. And then GitHub will automatically set up a branch and deploy your website onto a server somewhere. So you can access that website from anywhere. And then you can send a link to your friends. And so there's 3 primary languages used in web development. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and that provides the structure for your website. So that's like the skeleton of your website. JavaScript provides the functionality of your website. So that's like the muscles. And then CSS, style is your website. So that provides all the visual aspect of your website. And so the first thing we'll talk about is HTML. So HTML is the standard markup language for web browsers. And the way HTML works is you need a starting tag, an ending tag, and inside your starting tag, you can also add in additional attributes to describe the tag further. So for example, on this slide, we have the H1 tag, which stands for header 1. And so that'll create a text, a big text with the content hello world inside. And we have an attribute ID that describes the tag further, that gives the tag an ID of title. And so all of this HTML can be used together to provide functional structure to your website. You can nest all of these tags together in order to create more complex structures. And I guess Jenny will show you how that works.
Yeah, so let me just show you guys how that kind of looks like. So in my text editor, I have this very, very blank file called demo.html, and this is like the basic of what you need. Like you could literally just Google HTML template, and this is what will come to you. So let's just go through really quickly what it looks like. This just declares that this is a document, an HTML document, so your web browser will be able to recognize what it is. The head contains all the metadata for the browser to like interpret for you. The body is where you're going to make all your edits because that's what's going to show up onto the page. And then you have the closing tag for HTML. So let me just show you in my files. Oh, where is this? Let's go to personal site tutorial. And if I open this, just I click on it, it's going to pop up in the Chrome browser eventually. Oh, it did pop up. And as you can see, since it's empty, it just literally has nothing on it. So we're going to kind of show you how we can just like put some HTML elements on there. Like Devin mentioned, HTML is kind of like the bare bones. It's a skeletal structure. So if you want to put things like text, images, things like that, that's where you would be kind of putting stuff on there. So let's say that you obviously want a title to your website, right? So one element tag you can use for text is H1. This is a text tag. H1 is the biggest text tag, and it goes from H1 to H7, I think, and just bigger the number, the smaller the text. And basically, you have the tag, and then you can put your name, you can put your text in between the tags. So this is going to be my website. Let's just call it Jenny's website. You save it, and then you could look at your browser and immediately see the changes. Ta-da! We were able to put some text on our website. Let's add a picture because personal websites tend to have pictures, and there you can use the image tag. Oh, that just didn't work. So you can see this is the image tag. This doesn't end up having a closing tag. You can just look up all the HTML tags online. Basically, no one expects you to memorize them. You just kind of look up things as you go, I would say, as a web developer. Or a beginning one at least. And so as you can see, you have the image tag, you have the source. So it's just stored in the same folder that this is hosted in. You have alternative text, which is just basically if someone is visually impaired, this is what the text would show you. And then you can declare the width and the height of the photo. Then if you do and refresh, wow, we have an image. So you can kind of go through like this to declare like just all the skeleton code or like the basic components that your website is going to need. Let's say that I want to have a list of personal projects, right? Then let's use the H2 tag. As I mentioned, this is a text tag, but it's going to be smaller than the H1 tag. Let's call it personal projects. Let's use the P tag here, which is just a paragraph tag, which means it's just small text basically. And let's say check out my projects. And then let's put a list. There you can use the list tag. If this is kind of like overwhelming for you, it probably should be, or it will be, just because like you have to like, you just kind of have to Google for yourself like how to declare a list like in HTML and do it. Like no one expects you to memorize this, and it's just like a very high like learning curve that you just have to do by doing it yourself, unfortunately. So this is the list tag. So let me just put some of my projects. I'm on Project Zumba this year. What other things have I done? I was on, what's that called? Like Smart Block, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so then if you refresh, ta-da, as you can see, you can like slowly just like start building your website like little by little using these HTML tags. What is going on in the chat? Okay, cool. That is basically it. The one last thing I want to talk about are divs, which are a different type of tag, but they basically are like container tags. So if you want to classify, like if you look at this whole segment over here, it's all about personal projects, right? So if you want to like reference them as a whole, instead of having to reference like, oh, all of the individual list objects or all of the paragraph objects, then you can wrap them in a div. I could put all of this in a div. And I can make this, I can put an ID called personal projects. And then if you, this is more useful for styling, which we'll go over later, but if you can call this specific ID, then you're referencing this entire segment. This will make more sense when I go over the CSS part, but hopefully you guys kind of got the gist of what HTML is and like how you would use HTML to add components to your website. So let's go back to the slides. And then, okay, Devin, you can talk about Bootstrap a little bit now.
All right, sure, yeah. So Bootstrap's an open source CSS framework. It was originally built for Twitter, and it provides a lot of useful CSS classes that automatically styles your HTML for you. For example, you have those tabs right there. That's just HTML, but you add in a class from Bootstrap and it automatically styles all of your CSS for you. I mean, all of your HTML for you. So it makes it a lot easier for you to write code. You don't have to write as much CSS. You can just rely a lot on the Bootstrap classes and then style them yourselves as you go on when you need additional functionality or customizability.
Yeah, so let me show you what that kind of looks like in the code editor over here. One thing about HTML is that it's like very old. Like it's been like web pages have been, you know, there for a long time and like a lot of the basics haven't changed. So if you want to use just a basic HTML button, I'll show you what it looks like. It kind of looks, it just brings you back to like 2004. This is what the button looks like, right? Obviously, unless it's a certain part of your aesthetic, you probably don't want to have this kind of button on your website. And even if you don't want that, you also don't want to spend like tons of time like styling that button, right? So that's where Bootstrap comes in. It's just basically like a wrapper library. You can just reference different Bootstrap classes in order to style your components to look better. So this is literally what you do. Like people do this literally at their workplace, I promise. You just literally Google Bootstrap button. See, I've done it so many times. It's like in my search history. You look at the Bootstrap buttons, and then as you can see, they give you classes. So let's just copy this part. Go here. Let's declare another button. It's going to be Bootstrap button. And then and in this HTML tag, you could put things like what type is it and what class is it for the web page to recognize that they're trying to import a Bootstrap component. So basically with this tag over here, our web page should be able to recognize, oh, she's like putting a Bootstrap layer over the basic HTML button. So it should do that. Let's see what it looks like. Ta-da! This button, while it's not like the most beautiful button in the world, it looks a lot better than this, right? And it has special effects that when you like hover over it, there's like little animations, and there's more to this as well. But basically, Bootstrap is a library that you can use to style your website and make it look really pretty with minimal effort. Unless you want to go through and like manually style your own buttons. You can also do that as well. Another thing that it's really useful for is formatting things like in a nice symmetrical way. Formatting using CSS is kind of a nightmare, but you can use Bootstrap classes and Bootstrap containers and rows and columns in order to do something like that. So let's say I wanted to talk about all the classes I've taken because it's my personal website. So I declare a div. I want to make this a container class. And then in the class, let's say I want to have 2 rows. So let's make another div. Cool. Let's make 2 rows. So I'm just going to copy and paste. And then let's say within that class, I wanted a column. And a very appropriate question here is, how do you know what these classes are called? You Google them, is how you know what they're called, and like that's how you reference them. Let's say I want to put different classes I've taken. So I've taken data structures, maybe. What else have I taken? I've taken discrete math, taken algorithms, I've taken computer architecture, comp arc. As you can see, then it kind of nicely, formatted these items for me. So you could use all these different HTML elements, you could style them differently with Bootstrap in order to create like the basic framework of what you want your website to look like. Obviously, you don't want your website to look like this at the end, but this is how you kind of start getting the basic components down. Now let's talk about styling. So Devin, you can go ahead and talk about CSS.
Yeah, so CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Don't really know what that means, but CSS is used to style your website pretty much. The way CSS works is you use a selector and then you add in different attributes to your to style your website. For example, in this code here, you have an H1 selector, and inside these curly brackets, you have each of the different attributes it's going to change. For example, the font family is changing the font to Courier instead of the default. It's changing the font size, and it's changing the color. And so there's actually 3 different ways to add CSS to your website. You can use a style sheet, external style sheet, so creating a new file and then adding all of your CSS on there instead of anywhere else, I guess. And then there's also internal ways to add CSS, which is to create your own style tag and then put all of your CSS in there directly in the HTML. There's also the inline method where you add a style attribute to your HTML tag that specifically targets that HTML element and only that HTML element.
All right, so let's kind of go over what that looks like with the code. So as we talked about, there's different ways that you can kind of grab the element that you're looking at. One thing is that you can globally look at the tag. Like, let's say you want to change all H2 objects and make them all red. You can grab them like that. So I'll show you how to do that. You could just do H2, and then let's make color. Let's make it red. I hope that works. Let's see if that works. Yep. And it's going to basically take all H2 tags. There's only one H2 tag right now, which is why only one of them turned red. But it's going to take all H2 tags and make them red. And you can apply other styling to them. You can move them, you can make them bigger, etc., etc., etc. But another way you can reference it, a more popular way, is by using IDs and classes. So over here, I lumped all this personal project stuff into one ID called personal projects. And then if I want to change the color of all of these, I can reference it by using a hashtag, which means that this is an ID. I grab the ID tags. I think that's the right tag, personal projects. And then let's make the color purple. As you can see here, it took this entire ID and it made it purple. If you want to label multiple things as part of the same ID, you can't do that because IDs are unique, but you can make them a class. So if I really want to make these two, like this one, let's call this a name class. I can reference these two classes by using the dot. That's how you grab a class. Let's turn this one. See, so it was able to grab these two because classes can be like applied more than once to specific objects. IDs are unique, so you can only do that once. When you're styling CSS, you probably don't really want to go through, like do this, save it, and then look at it. What most people do is that they open the console on your web browser. So the way to do that is you can press Control-Shift-C, and this console shows up. I'm sure most of you have like accidentally brought up this console because you guys press like random sequences of keyboard letters. But basically what you can do here is you can use this little button this little clicker button and select a specific element. Like let's say I want to select this one because I want to change maybe the size of that one. So when I select it, it shows you, oh, this is under the name class. Also, this is an H1 object. So let's say I want to change the size of this and I want to make it bigger. I can just click on here. As you can see, it like shows you like recommendations for what CSS, what's it called, styling elements you want. And let's use font size. Let's say I want this to be 100 pixels because I want it to be bigger. Wow. And then you realize that this is way too big. So then you can go through, make it smaller, 20 pixels. That's too small. And basically you just go through and like see, like kind of mock up how you want your website to look using this console, and then reflect those changes in the actual document here after you feel happy with how it looks like. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Those are basically the basic elements you need to know in starting how to like design and create your own personal website. It's probably pretty normal to feel confused right now because a lot of it is just trial and error. You try different things, it doesn't work, and then you realize why it doesn't work, and then you learn through that. To get you guys started, Devin wrote some really nice starter code for you. So I'll show you what that starter code looks like. Ta-da! Where it just like mimics just like the basic like personal website format, but you can customize it, right? You can obviously put your name over here. You can change the background. You can make an interactive background. You know, you could put a picture of yourself. You could rearrange this to be in a different orientation. You're going to upload your resume. You can make it really, you can change it as much or as little as you want, but this is a really good template to get started. One last thing is let me show you how you guys are going to publish it via GitHub. And then the rest of the time we'll be here to like answer any questions for like the next 30 minutes or an hour or so, and to help you guys get started. So let me go to my GitHub. Where's my repos? Okay. Wait, Devin, do you know if I can make another one? Because I have one that's like this.
You could like delete it, or you could just tell them to make something like that.
Okay, how do I delete this?
Go into the repo.
Settings.
And just scroll all the way down.
Okay. Okay, cool. So if you want to host your personal website on GitHub, which basically means that it's going to be globally available to anyone who has that link, you're going to make your GitHub, you're going to make a new repository, and then you're going to make your repository name the name of your, I'll just show you, but it's the name of your GitHub username. So it's Heyman Lee for me. Then .github.io. Is that right, Devin?
Yeah.
Perfect. And after you do that, it's just going to automatically recognize it as like, okay, this is something that I'm going to host for you, and it's going to be your website link. So then you can create your repository. So right now there's like clearly nothing in here, right? So then let's copy this link and let's clone it. I'm just going to put it in. All right. Okay, so I cloned it, and I'm going to drop this file that I made, the demo file that I was working with, this really, not this one, this really kind of basic website that I made. So we're going to drop this demo file into the folder that I cloned, so right here. So just copy it. And then let's paste it in here. Okay, perfect. And now let's push this so that GitHub gets all the changes that we made. Okay, so everything was pushed. So now you can see, here's my file. Then let's see if this works. Oh, wow. Wait, what was the next step, Devin?
It's that it was the under slash demo.html.
This is a file that you want to reference because they're looking at the root repository right now, which has nothing to render. So then you have to change the path of this. And ta-da, you'll be able to see the terrible website that I made published here. So for instance, like I'll put this in the link and you guys should all be able to see it as well because it's published onto the GitHub servers. So basically we really just sped through like the basics of web development as well as how to make and like deploy your own website. Let me link to you guys the link of the skeleton code that you guys can clone and then you guys can try to get working. Let's see. USD makers. Okay. So basically that is the starter code if you guys want to clone it and attempt to like make your own changes onto it as well as like modify it, try to publish it, whatever you guys want to do really.